Tonight we begin Daf Lamed Tet Amud Aleph in Masechet Sukka. Super exciting, and I think tonight I will be happy if we just get the basics down pat. We got to walk before we can run. So this is a rather complex section because for those of us who do not live in Eretz Yisrael or never lived there during a time period of Shemitah, it's a whole different world. So let's get a little bit involved. On during the year of Shemitah, which we are now presently we are in, which is also a little bit of a subject of halachic debate about how to count up to know what year of Shemitah you're in, but that's another discussion for another time. We know that we are not allowed to work the land in various ways in Eretz Yisrael. There are various prohibitions. The Torah describes these prohibitions variously in Parashat Mishpatim, again in Parashat Kitisa, and of course its headquarters in Parashat Bahar, as well as other aspects of the elements of Shemitah as described in Parashat Re'eh. That's more Shemitah Ksafim, but they're all in the same family. In one place it's called Shabbat Haaretz. Another place it's called Shemitah. Shabbat Haaretz should be self-explanatory what that means. Shemitah means a relinquishing. And the relinquishing means taking one's hands off the controls in terms of the working of the land, but also of the harvesting of the land beyond the minimum amounts that an individual might need for their own personal consumption. Further, and what we'll deal with tonight is the reality that one is enjoined from doing business with elements of that which has the kedusha of Shviit, and the prohibition on this also we'll see is going to be qualified. And our Mishnah, the lead into the Mishnah, now that we've talked about various different issues in chapter 3 was all about Daled Minim, and we've talked about all of each of the Daled Minim, and then we had a Mishnah about the Eged that was on the 36b, and then on 37 we got to the Na'anua. 37b was Na'anua, right? 38 was you don't have it, need to get it in your hand, you arrived late, right? How do you prioritize what you're going to do next? And when can you defer the fulfillment of the mitzvah of Daled Minim when you have to do it immediately? And that led us into the idea that once we said Nanuim, we started talking about Hallel. So where this fits in now is that the Mishnah on Lamed Tet Amud Aleph is talking about the acquisition issue of trying to get a bundle, a lulav, and an etrog during Shemitah. And of course, the main star here is the etrog. It's a fruit. As we will soon see, we're going to be qualifying what that actually means. This sugya, by the way, goes on till pretty much till Mem Aleph Amud Aleph to the next Mishnah, which is going to veer us back into the world of observance, if you will, but observance of the mitzvah itself, as opposed to the acquisition and the element of kinyan, etc., that we talked so much about previously. And so the Mishnah here begins with the status of an etrog that is actually being purchased somehow on Shemitah. By the by, we're not yet, for most fruits, almost, I don't know if any fruits, I think we're just starting now, almost none of the fruits right now in Eretz Yisrael are per se subject to the issues of Shemitah, because the fruit is still from last year. It's still harvesting and coming out now. But that which emerges as a fruit, the chanata, the blossoming of the flower that's going to lead to the fruit, that takes place on the year of Shemitah, that will be subject to the laws of Shemitah. And that means it's going to extend into the next year. So come around Pesach time, that's when we're really getting into, like, this is now coming into the new crop is now that grew during Shemitah, that's going to have the status, okay? So in other words, it doesn't go by Shemitah starts, Shemitah ends, so it's just during that year. It's when did the produce, depending on what kind of produce, either the chanata, the flowering, the blossoming kind of thing, or the lakita, the picking, the could be a machloket there, depending on the type of produce. We'll see that now inside. But that's going to have a nafkamina for us. Let's say this past Sukkot, it was already Shmita in Eretz Yisrael, but nobody cared that it was, to buy your Etrog. About buying an Etrog wasn't an issue. Why? Because none of the Etrogim grew during Shemitah. They all came before, and according to the way we paskin. You'll see now what I mean. This coming year, there's going to be a practical halacha coming up. So the Mishnah begins again, 39a. Halokech lulav mechavero b'shviit, notein lo etrog b'matana, lefi she'ein rashai lelokcho b'shviit. So the literal translation is a person who takes a lulav from his friend on the holiday of the year of Shemitah has to give him the etrog as a gift, because you're not allowed to actually sell it on Shemitah. We'll have to understand what that means. Right away, Rashi jumps in. Look at Rashi on the Mishnah. He writes, the issue is not stam, my friend. It's that the fellow that I'm getting it from is an am haaretz. Today, the words am haaretz are pejorative. It means an ignoramus. But we should recognize that even in the days of Chazal, they were sort of backed into it, didn't have a choice, two classes of people. But I would say the classes was not a caste system. It was you could say a meritocracy. The people who were a little loose when it came to following halacha in three realms, in terms of issues of tuma and tahara, in terms of issues of tithes, masrot, and in terms of issues of shmita, if you just weren't serious about it. So you were in a particular class called the Amei Haaretz. So if you'd ask an Am Haaretz, do you keep Shabbos? Of course, keep Shabbos. Would you light a candle? Of course not. Nothing to do with that. You ask them a Tum and Tahara. I can do the big stuff. I don't hock me a chinik with the Shani Latuma. I don't know from this. And there's the same thing when it came to Masrot. Nobody was going to violate, Truma itself. But when it came to like Maser Sheni, Maser it's like, there's a mitzvah to take Truma from fruit. If you didn't take the Truma, the fruit is Tevel. As Morv Rav Lichtenstein used to point out, you would never eat a piece of chaz if you're an Orthodox Jew, but then the same Jew doesn't realize that it's also an Isser to eat fruit from which Trumot were not taken. Now, it's also mitzvah to take Masrot, but the Maser is not being metaken the fruit. In other words, the Maser is a mitzvah, chiyuvit, which if you didn't do it, it's a bittul aseh, but there's no Isser Tevel on something when the Maser were not taken. So the Amei Haaretz, they would do Truma Gedola, but you're going to start hocking them, lo mechpat lem. That's an Amei Haaretz. And then the third element was Shemitah. The big things they knew, but don't hock me about details. And that was part of the problem. So the Chaverim was the comrades, the fellowship of people who cared, and the Amei Haaretz were the people who were not so strict. So Rashi says the girsa here must be that you took the lulav from an Am Haaretz Kamari Kida Amrinan beGemara, as it will describe in the Gemara. Am Haaretz legabe chaver lo kari lechavero. So there's something wrong with the version, the manuscript of the Mishnah that we have, because it implies you're taking the lulav from your fellow, i.e., your fellow chaver. But that's not really what's going on. And if you want to say that you're saying that it's from an Am Haaretz, why are you calling it doesn't add up. You're saying your chaver means it was someone that you trusted. So why you have a suspicion that you can't trust them? Okay, Mark's waiting patiently. No, not so patiently. Oh, you don't have a question? Oh, sorry.
No. Once I read the Rashi,
yeah,
can answer in the
yeah, he kind of puts it into context. So suspicion that they're not taking it seriously. What? You have reason to be suspicious, right? So Rashi doesn't think that they think something's wrong with the girsa here. I saw in one of the commentaries, and I don't remember where now, that maybe Rabbeinu Gershom Me'or Hagola had a girsa otherwise that had this Am Haaretz in it. I don't know. It's not written in Rashi here, but I think someone else was it on. Did I see it on the page here? I don't remember, but I just don't remember. Okay, never mind. Doesn't matter. Let's look at Tosfot though. Right away, Tosfot on the Mishnah. Elkech lulav mechaver b'shvit. You can see in the wide lines, it's the first dibur matchil there. Elkech lulav mechaver b'shvit. So right away, Tosfot says to Rashi, Pirish Bekuntras, he quotes Rashi, based on the way that the Gemara goes on, you'll see the Gemara will talk about an Am Haaretz overtly. So Rashi assumes something's wrong with the Mishnah of Am Haaretz legabe chaver lekari chavero, and he declares that Am Haaretz related to a chaver is not called really his fellow, because they're not really friends, because this guy takes it seriously and that guy's a bluffer, he's a joker, so take it seriously. But Tosfot, right, end of the first line of that Tosfot, Val chinam dachak. But the truth is, for nothing did Rashi work himself into a lather. Why? Actually, in many places in Shas, a person who's an Amaretz is still called the chaver of a chaver. Where do you see this? Mashal et ish lechaverta chasuda al Shviit. A woman could borrow from her friend. Or she'd lend out rather to her friend who is suspected with regard to Shviit, regard to Shemitah, that she's not serious about it. Or a parak b'chol ma'arvin ha'omel chavero tzei lekat lechat te'enim te'enati ochel mehen arai uma'asran vadai avekatani sefer medvarim written ba'am haaretz. Again, another example here with regard to figs and taking just eating in a haphazard manner. Basically, again, another example, right? And there's an example, actually. A man shouldn't say to his fellow, go out and please hire workers for me. A chavero there is a non-Jew. So Tosfot would say to Rashi, what are you getting all worked up that it says chavero? It can't be a chaver. It can only be an amaretz. So something's wrong with the girsa. The word chaver I just showed you in 3 different places can mean variously an amaretz or a goy.
Although it would be odd that someone would buy their lulav from a goy. Yeah.
I mean, Mark pointed out maybe it's odd to buy your lulav from a goy. Don't forget, on page 30b on the top, we had learned that I think it was Rav Huna told his people with the Avankari story. Remember? Go get the hadassim from the seller who's the non-Jew who picked the hadassim. So it's not clear it has to be from a Jew per se. They're not clear. Although here, the implication is for sure it's from a Jew. By the way, because if it's from a non-Jew, and of Kedushat Shviit, according to not according to anybody, but almost certainly
You wouldn't have Shviit apply.
Yeah, exactly. The Shemitah wouldn't apply. It'd be Yivul Nachri. So if the guy picked it in his garden in Italy and he's selling it to you.
Rashi doesn't appoint any culpability to the buyer.
Oh, right. So that's where I have to see now.
That's why I hesitate, because the more I'm sure we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But
Look at Rashi on Notin Lo Etrog B'Matana. Back in the Mishnah in Rashi, it's the narrow lines. So it's the second Dibur HaMatchil. Notin Lo Etrog B'Matana. He gives him the Etrog as a gift. Chaver Shekona Hoshana Kula Me'am Haaretz B'Shviit. Yevakesh Mimeno Litain Lo Etrog B'Matana. If you're buying the Hoshana, what does it mean you're buying the Hoshana? It means you're buying the lulav and the hadasim and the aravot. The bundle is called the Hoshana bundle. That's the colloquial term. Just like we say, pass me the lulav. You don't expect the person to pick out the palm front and give you the palm front. What about give me all 3, right? Same idea. So you should just ask the fellow, I'm going to buy the lulav from you, meaning I'm buying the bundle, lulav, hadasim, lulav, hadasim, and aravot. Do me a favor, throw in the etrog gratis. Now, he could jack up the price of the lulav bundle, but the etrog is included in the price, as opposed to saying, how much is the etrog, how much is the lulav? So you'll see what happens. And this year, at the various purveyors of fine daled minim at a store near you, hopefully they know that when they put the price tag on things, normally put the price tag on the etrog. Remember? Put the price tag on the etrog.
So this year it'll be on the lulav.
Oh, so this year has to be on the lulav. Now you'll say to me, well, what if I choose a nicer etrog? Good, the lulav that you bought turns out is more expensive.
That's right.
A little bit of but that's the point. It has to be b'havla. Lefi she'ein rashai, the Gemara will explain what does it mean. Lefi, the last line of the Mishnah, lefi she'ein rashai lo b'shviit, because he can't purchase it on Shemitah. What does that mean? He can't purchase it. He just purchased it, but sort of like some buy the back door way that you're purchasing it. How come? How does that work? What's the mechanism? So that's the basic gist of the Mishnah. And just to realize, again, I tried to put it in a context, having dealt with all the issues about each of the Daled Minim individually, and then having dealt with the bundle as a bundle, both the tying or non-tying, the waving, the when it came into your hand issue, and then the related story of Hallel, because you do that when you have it in your hand. The last piece in our parak about the status of the lulav etrog as a unit is, what do you do on Shemitah with the etrog? That's a problem. So you'll buy the lulav bundle and you'll bundle it together. And we will soon see, though, of course, the plot will thicken considerably, but that's the baseline. Can we go to the Gemara? Questions, comments? Are we good?
I do have a quick question.
Please, Buddha.
The etrog is segregated because you can eat it?
Yes, it is a fruit. And let's say for now, our working assumption, which I'm about to destroy, but the working assumption is that fruit is what is subject, fruit and vegetables are subject to Hilchot Shemitah, but not other vegetation. Working assumption. We're going to see it's going to be challenged in the Gemara. Lulav is about to be an item.
It's called benatayim.
Benatayim. Look at the Gemara. Lo ratzalitain lo b'matana mahu. What if the fellow, the Amaret says, I'm not giving it to you as a present. What are you talking about? Amar Rav Huna mavlialet me etrog belulav. Right? He swallows up the cost of the etrog in the lulav cost. So the Gemara asks, "V'leitev le behedja." Why? What's the issue here? Why are you claiming that he actually has to do some kind of what looks like a bit of a harama, like a little bit of a subterfuge? You'll include it so that you're not really selling me the etrog. Let him just buy it already. Look at Rashi. Look at Rashi right here. Hold your finger in the Gemara. Look in Rashi. Mavliya le dmei etrog belulav. Yimkor lulav biyoker. Ad shitain lo etrog b'matana. Buy the lulav for so much money, the etrog is thrown in. But then, v'leitiv le dmei etrog behedja. My tamein Rasha lo chobet Shviit. Like why? So why can't he sell him the etrog already? Like why can't he just give it to him? And the Gemara here says, it's near the superscript hey that's on top there. I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines up from the bottom. We don't want to give the money for fruit of Shemitah on to an Am Haaretz because they won't know what to do with them. Now, I have to explain this and unpack it. And if you just look at Rashi, you can see it's a rather long, well, not so long, but it's a fundamental Rashi here. But let's read one more, 1.5 more lines in the Gemara. The Tanya, as the Braita teaches, Ein Mosrin to make Perot Shviit Lama Aretz Yoter Mimazon Shalosh Seudot. We don't give money to for the fruit of Shemitah to an Am Haaretz more than the sum that they would be able to spend on 3 meals. Cryptic, but not more than that. Masar, I got to go to the bottom of the line here. Masar, but if he did the transaction, Yomar, he should say to himself, Harimot Halalu, the money I just gave to the Am Haaretz, it should be Yehu, I think. Mechulalin al perot sheyesh li b'toch beiti. They will be deconsecrated, this money. It'll go on fruit that's in my house. Uba v'ochlan b'kedushat Shviit. Top of the next page. And he will go home and he'll eat it with kushat Shviit. What is going on here? What is going on? So look at Rashi, because Rashi, he's our Rebbe. We sit next to him as much as we can, or at his feet, I should say. And we learn, Ein Mosrin to make perot, Torah amra le'ochla. The fruit on Shemitah is for the purpose of eating. But Chazal have a drasha, velo lischora, but it's not for business. Meaning, shekol perot shvi'it, chayavin lehitba'er b'shvi'it, hein udmei hen. All the fruit of Shemitah needs to be destroyed. That's really what biur is, like biur chametz, lehitba'er, to be destroyed, to be consumed. It's really consumed on Shemitah, them and their money. But not that you're going to keep the money that you received for selling an item of perot shviit, and you're going to keep it for after Shemitah. That you cannot do. ulahashir, and in order to make yourself wealthy. The Amei Haaretz chashudin al kach. The whole problem is that the Amei Haaretz are suspected of this. So again, you go to the seller, and the seller is a chaver, not an Amaretz, and the chaver wants to sell you an etrog. No problem. You're going to buy it from them, and when you give them the money now got kedushat shviit attached to it as well. Why? It was involved in a transaction of selling with perot shviit. But don't worry, the chaver is sensitive to that. The chaver will use that money for some purpose that is a consumable, that will be used for food in the immediacy of the moment or something else. And that's not going to be true for an Amaretz. You're going to give it to him, puts it in his bank account, that's going to be a problem. So, and that's what Rashi is teaching us here. Lefichach, ein mosim lehem damim, lekach lehem klum bedamim. Deka'avar alifnei iver lo titein michshol. If you'll give him the money, he's going to hold on to the money, and that's a violation for him. But you set up the parameters for him to violate this mitzvah. We don't want to be putting them in the dock. Therefore, you work it out so that what you're actually paying, again, the money is going to end up being the same amount, maybe, but you're telling the fellow, I can't buy the etrog this year. Let me buy the lulav at, some $50 more, $75 more, whatever it is, right? And that'd be in the lulav bundle. Throw in an etrog for me. So the Gemara says you can't actually, the language here matters because the status of what's happening. If you will say to him, you're just an etrog salesman. Let me buy an etrog off of you. So when you give him the money, the money itself takes on the kedusha of kedushat shviit because it was involved in the transaction. What can the person do with that money? They can buy only things that they can eat or consume right then and there. Another example, which seems counterintuitive, you could buy oil that you're using for a lamp because it's going to be consumed. And that would be permissible. But you couldn't buy it for something that is for clothing or something. So the Gemara allows for a provision. You made a mistake. You did it already. And you're a chaver. So say in your mind, I am taking those monies and their kedusha will go on fruit that's in my house, which will now have kedushat shviit. And when you do that, you can go home and you're going to eat it there. And Rashi, in fact, teaches us the 3 seudot. What's that talking about? Right? Aval mazon gimel, back in Rashi. Aval mazon gimel, mosrim, kedei chayav. The ikalamemer l'seudat Shabbat hutzarich. Since, v'keven shutar, v'erev Shabbat, hutar kol yemot Shabbat. It's an interesting idea. Why up to 3 meals? That's sustenance. Now in antiquity, in the time of the Gemara still, it's 2 meals, not 3 meals a day, except on Shabbos. Therefore, you say up to 3 meals, because maybe he's going to use it for his Shabbos meals. So up to 3, that you could do. But more than that, no can do. The assumption is he has this larger sum, he's going to hold on to it. And that you can't do. V'masar, if you made a mistake, shishachach masalo, yomar, chaver zeh, shemasarlo, let the chaver say, as he gave him the money, amal alalu, shemasarti lamaretz zeh, the money that I already gave over to this, am haaretz, see the bach, v'chala, right? V'chala, aleim, take out the word zeh, lama aretz, v'chala aleim kedushat shviit, they had the sanctity. Kedam reading the comment, it'll say in daf mem, we'll learn about that. Shviit, tosefet dameh b'kedushata mikaroi, right? That the kedusha of shviit, its money will also get kedusha. The money associated with the transaction will acquire kedusha, and then you should say you they're not of shmita. But you can't say apparently kedusha tachtein. I'm transferring it over, like I'm trying to do something to salvage the kedusha. It's not a laughing matter. It's not a small matter. So we should be careful with it. And the point here is that we try to avoid doing so. Presumably, the etrog value, presumably, is worth more than shalosh seudot. Otherwise, you would just say, well, since it's worth shalosh seudot, so I can just buy the etrog off. It's worth 3 meals. But the assumption is that the etrog market back in the day is such that it was more expensive than 3 meals. That you weren't allowed to do. Okay, you made a mistake, so there's a way out. Everybody with me so far? Ish? Yes? I'm getting some nods. Jeff's nodding. Art's brow is furrowed. Benny's nodding. Jude is looking down. Okay, everyone else's screen is off. Okay, you're with me. Yes, you're with me here in person? We're live. Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I wanted to buy, I went to the store to get my lulav and Etrog, right? And all of a sudden, I hear the owner, I don't know, what was the problem? A man came in and wanted just a lulav.
Mm.
You know, like you said.
Didn't want the set.
Right.
Yeah. Francis mentioning coming into the store after, right, after Yom Kippur, and a guy just wanted the lulav bundle. He was not interested in the etrog. יכול להיות, מה לעשות? יש דבר כזה. Anyone else? Questions, comments, thoughts?
I have two. I have a question too. אתרוג ישראלי שגדל, שיש לו קדושת שביעית,
Okay.
מוכרים אותו אבל בחוץ לארץ.
Yes.
קדושה נשארת או לא?
It's another discussion. What
So-
happens to Shviit? There's another issue. I can't go there tonight, Judah. It's a great question. But can you bring Perot Shviit outside of Eretz Yisrael? Do they retain their Kedusha? Let's say for all intents and purposes, for now, for us, yes. And that's why functionally we do try to buy the Etrogim in such a way that it's really Bahavla in some way from the sellers of Daled Minim near us. But there is a discussion about taking Perot Shviit outside of Eretz Yisrael altogether, and what the halachas are. You know, we're about to go into this. This is going to be, I got to give a shir something about it. Lina there. I mean, Pesach time, we're getting there. Your Jaffa oranges, your whatever else, it's going to be an issue. It's going to start coming up. Wine is not an issue right now at all. The wine's not an issue, but next year, it's going to be an issue. Going to be an issue. What happens if you open a bottle of the wine, as it says on it, Kedushat Shviit? So there's halachas. You can't stop and just pour it down the drain. You got to think about it. So there's the discussions to be had. You could drink it in one sitting, Mark says. Okay, you're on the record for that. Okay, all right. So that's groundwork. Number one. Number one. Yeah. Okay. Turn to the next page. 39b. So now the Gemara points out that I'm sorry, you know what? We have to do the top Rashi on 39b first, because the clause at the top of the page, the first line is ba the ochlam b'kedushat shviit. He goes home and he consumes it.
The 3 meals.
Exactly. So before you get to the 3 meals, look at uba chaver zev ochel otam. Yeah, the 3 meals worth, the more than 3 meals worth money, right? The problem was so again, what we saw in 39a is you could do a transaction with an amaretz up to the value of whatever it would cost to buy 3 meals, because that's Kedei Chayav on Shabbos. So because of that, we let a person get 3 meals any day of the week. But let's say you pulled $500 out, and you gave it to the Amaretz, and then you realized I am not allowed to do that because he's going to hold on to that and put it in his account. It's way more than 3 meals. So what do? You say, okay, the money I just transferred to him, let its Kedusha is going to move to Perot Shviit that I have in my house. Then you go to your house and you eat those b'kedushat shviit. What is b'kedushat shviit? Achila b'kedushat shviit. You don't leave any of it over. You don't throw the peels out, the rinds. You have to hold on to them. There's a special kufsat perot shviit, which Rav Yosef Tzvi Rimon Shalita pointed out many times. Did it? I think it was last Shemitah. He said it here. Don't call it a pach. Sounds like a garbage pail. It's not garbage. The whole point is it has kedusha. So he said you should decorate. If you have children, grandchildren, you have them decorate. It should be a nice thing in your house. You put it in there, and once it decomposes, you can wrap it up and gently place it in the recycling. But you can't destroy it willfully. So here the Gemara just points out uba chaver top Rashi, excuse me, on 39b. Uba chaver zeh ve'ochel tamaper b'kedushat shviit. He can consume it with the sanctity of shviit. Now here's what it includes. Achila ushtia, vesicha, that's like a smearing like an oil on or something. And the point is it's getting absorbed. Vadlakat haner, for giving light. And shehein ha'anaot hamutarot bahen. These are permitted benefits. Kidemafarish Masachet Shviit, as is elucidated in Masachet Shviit in the Mishnah and Parakhet, Mishnah Bet. And I'll tell you the common denominator right here, because it's going to be relevant in about 5 minutes if we have that kind of time. All of these things, the moment they're being consumed is also the same moment that you're deriving benefit from it. The biur and the hana'ah are happening in time, as opposed to a delay which we'll see an example of in a few minutes. Just hold that thought, but that's sort of that's a little bit of the background. I think Rashi says a little bit later. But Medvarim,
I'm confused. I'm confused about one comment, and
Go
that's
ahead.
regarding burning. You said, so does that mean that if olives and are grown and and it's made into oil, and I want to use it for my Chanukiah, I can't use it?
if you're using it for light, you can use it for light. That's what he's saying here. You could use it for light.
So I can light. So technically speaking, I could use olives. Let's say during the Shemitah year, and I bought it for Hanukkah, and I can light my menorah with the oil.
I think so. If it has Kedushat Shviit, yeah, you're using it. Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
I think so.
I would just.
You're the
Okay.
first person to ever ask me that, Shiloh. And Hanukkah, I'm
Okay.
saying, like, I think the answer is yes. But remind me when we get closer to Hanukkah, because it's actually going to be it's an act of Shiloh. What did we do 7 years ago? You say to me, I don't remember.
Okay.
למעשה זה בשמינית, לא בשביעית.
Lema'aseh, right? But fruit, it's coming. The issue is about to happen. If you went to Israel, like in the last few months, it's generally not much of an issue. I went to one of the yeshivot that I visited recently. Actually had a whole thing with Kedushat Shviit, where they wanted the people to put it in like a pach. They called it a pach. I was not happy. It was not my yeshiva. It was another yeshiva I was visiting. Won't mention where. And I saw in the Chadarocha, it said like pach Shviit with Kedushat Shviit, and people were putting, fruits and vegetables in there. Yeah. There's an Indian to eat fruit and vegetables Kedushat Shviit. Anyway, look at line 3 here in Rashi. Bamed Dvarim Amurim. Oh, sorry. We just have to learn the Gemara first. That's usually the minhag, isn't it? End of the first line of the Gemara. Sorry. Bamed Dvarim Amurim. When was all of this spoken? That you can have this transaction with the Muslims Shalosh Seudot, with the up to Muslim Shalosh Seudot, with the Amaretz, Belokech min Amufkar. When you know for sure that the person is selling you something they got from an abandoned or ownerless place. Aval belokech min mishumar. But let's say this guy owns a little farm and he has a fence around it so no intruders can come in. It's closed. It's held in. It's called mishumar. So afilu bekachatzi isar asur. Even a small little quantity, a small value rather, you cannot trade with them. I mean, a mishumar, that's not allowed. That's just not allowed. So
Meaning the restriction of Shemitah is on the farm, is on the land and the farmer,
both.
not right. But if I pick up 12 apples that are lying around,
Yeah.
I can conceivably sell them.
Right.
Because
They
I'm
didn't
not the
actually,
farmer.
you're not a farmer. They didn't belong to they didn't belong to you before anybody else.
Right, you're a hefker.
Yeah. Now, in a related story, in principle, on Shemitah, a person should be allowed to go to any field. There's no Truman and Masro taken
Right.
on these things,
Take whatever.
and just take whatever you want and just eat it. But there are a few rules. One is you can only take what you need. You can't start picking baskets and baskets filled with it if it's on someone else's land to take it. But it's ownerless, right? So then it's whatever you take, but you can't. In other words, that's part of the issue here. The Am Haaretz, you saw that he came from a locked fenced-in area. Where did you go in there? Oh, I keep my stuff locked up. Okay, we can't buy that.
Right. It's just interesting that the case sort of seems to have fast forwarded past all that. How did the Am Haaretz get the Etrog that he's selling to the guy?
The assumption is that he got it.
By walking into a field and picking it up.
That's the assumption.
Okay.
That's the assumption.
And so then the issue now becomes,
That's still Kedushat Shviit.
right.
Yeah.
So you still can't buy it from him? You still-
Not directly.
Not-
You cannot buy directly, but you're buying something
I
else.
understand.
And behavla, it's included.
Right, okay.
It's included in
So
it.
no one can sell any payroll that have been grown during Shemitah.
Yeah, a goy. A goy can.
A non-Jew can, yeah. And now we come to the whole issue with Yivul
Okay.
Nachri, and we get to the issue of Heter Mechira. And there's a lot to say on this subject. I mean, I don't want to go too far afield, you're pardon the pun, but there are a lot of problems on all sides of these kinds of
I
issues.
got
People
it.
want to play it safe halachically, super playing it safe. they start making sure to buy Yevul Nachri. So where are they getting Yevul Nachri? You know where they're getting it from? Gaza. So you're putting the fruits and vegetables on your table and you're sponsoring rockets?
Even though it grew be'eretz HaKodesh.
If it's owned by a non-Jew, so the assumption is it's mufka from having the Kedusha at Shviit. But you understand why it's a huge problem. Like, and then so the people, they don't like the Heter Mechira, it's too makel for them, even though there are many poskim who dafka support it. Not as a lechatchila, it's a b'diavad, right? We'll talk about it, whatever. There's Otzar Beitin is much better. And sometimes you can eat some things b'kedushat shviit. It's all good, but this business Yevul Nachri, people like, oh, it's so much better. Yeah, you're funding, you know who. It's not a good idea. So it has implications. You know what I mean? And more on that in a future installment. Wait, Larry, you had your hand up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Is there any concern with the?
I don't hear a word you're saying. I'm sorry. Can you speak up? Try again.
You hear me better now?
Yes.
Is there any concern about Onah when we play these games with the bundle and the free Etrog by jacking the price of the bundle?
The jacking up of the price of the bundle is a great question, but the jacking of the price of the bundle is mysteriously has to be commensurate with the actual value of the Etrog. You have a better question that you're too polite to ask, which is in general, what's going on with the markup on Daled Minim? And is that an issue of Onah? So we're being recorded. I refuse to answer. But
You gotta make a living. All right.
no, I don't want to say. I don't want to say. But
Why isn't Onah concerned when at least in our
price
age,
gouging is oppression. It was oppression, but he was taking advantage. Yeah.
the most expensive part of it is the Etrog. They're scarcer, the quality.
Legitimately, it's the most valuable item of the four. That's not a question.
So a $10 shlosha mealy all of a sudden is now $110.
And the Etrog's free.
Yeah. So that, yeah, it's free. Okay.
It's 6 out of 7 years, right? How does it work in every place you ever go to that I've seen? You go in, you choose your Etrog, whatever value you're going to choose. You look at whichever one, we talked a lot about that, by the way, what's kosher, what's not. So I don't know if anyone remembers practically, but I'll give it a refresher. We get closer to Sukkot. You pick it. And then you find that the lulav and the hadas and the rava, they have to be kosher, but the lion's share of the cost is every year pretty much marked on the etrog, not on the lulav bundle. So what happens in the year of Shemitah? So again, this presupposes, by the way, that the etrog actually arrives with Kedushat Shviit. If it came from Italy, it's not an issue. If it came from Egypt's not an issue. If it had the Heter Mechira, it's not an issue, assuming you rely on the Heter Mechira, which I underscore again, is not necessarily the best thing in all circumstances, but sometimes it might be. And practically, I mean, the very small foray I made into Eretz Yisrael just a short time ago, and talking with various colleagues, different things, on when you work at scale, it's much harder to be machmer on these issues in the economic scale of Eretz Yisrael, even today, even with everything that's been accomplished. So the various solutions at hand. I just heard a presentation from someone when I was for the day with Rav Asher Weiss, someone who gave a presentation that Rav Asher Weiss was very supportive of. So we'll see, maybe Arshel will participate in that, but that's still forthcoming. Okay, I only have 3 minutes left. You had more to say, Larry? No. Judah. Wait, Larry, what don't you understand? Havla means instead of...
Let me explain. I don't understand when you say, well, the Etrog is free, but there has been a distortion of the price of the bundle. The fact that the Etrog is free, so you would test Onah based on the value of the bundle. Period.
I hear you, but Vide, page 39a, that was the suggestion of Rav Huna. Mavlia le dmei etrog balulav. That's what he meant.
But he wasn't dealing with the issue of law. I give him credit that he must have considered it. But the fact that the etrog is free doesn't resolve the fact that the price of the shlosha minim
Is now higher.
has been zoomed.
All things being equal, you're right. But I suspect that whatever the issues are of concern there are subservient to or made subservient to the reality of the moment where we need to have people buy Daled Minim, and they have here we're faced a situation where it's Amahara selling it.
As I think of it, I may have come up with an answer.
Oh,
The answer,
go ahead.
the answer is Ona is based on the marketplace. And since everybody is throwing in a free etrog, the
Good.
market price of the Shlosha Minim
Has
is
changed.
now $110, not $10.
Oh, I like it.
All right, it's yours.
No, I accept. I accept. I accept. I think it's a great. Sounds good to sounds good to me. Sounds good to me. Okay, Yehuda, you had something you wanted to ask.
I have a short story to tell that may shed a little bit of light. I'm not happy.
Kavod gadol.
When I was on a tour in Morocco, a Jewish, actually under the auspices of the university in Jerusalem, we toured here and there and everywhere. And the guide, who an Israeli but was born there, told us that in that particular region, which is near the Atlantic coast, usually near, anyway, on the western side of Morocco, a lot of etrogim are growing. Every year, before the Chagim, some chaverim from a certain Hasidic cut of cut shel Hasidim in New York comes over there. I'm not going to say the word, he told me, would go over there. They have some young Moroccan boys, non-Jews,
Cutting
they
it.
climb on the trees
Wow.
and will in Yiddish say to those guys on the ground, nish or nish git.
Get in this get.
That's what they did. And if he says git, he would cut it for him. Now, the reason they're not buying Israeli etrogim mechashash Shviit or for other political reasons. That I never thought, I didn't understand why. This is a cut. That
Yeah. You certainly can be Makayim the mitzvah with the etrogim from other places, not from
Correct, yeah.
Israel. But I would like to point out, that there's something very special to be able to have them dafka from Eretz Yisrael. The Rambam and the Moreh Nevuchim writes that that's why the Daled Minim are the Daled Minim. The Jewish people were encamped in the place as against Yericho. And what's growing there in the Jordan Valley, very, very many palm trees are found there. And it's near the Jordan, so there's a lot of Aravot and Hadassim, and there were Etrog trees in the area. So there's all the Peirot of Eretz Yisrael, So I think it's intrinsically bound up with Eretz Yisrael, but certainly it's kosher from other places. My dear friends, please forgive me, but tonight is the boys' bar mitzvah group, and it's starting very soon.
Shkach.
We do have to end now.
Yashikach.
7:46. So I'll close now. Thanks for coming. We will learn in Mitzvah Hashem next week. We're on Lamed Amud Bet. We're on the third line where Rav Sheshet will ask a question. We'll come back to it, God willing, next week in health and happiness. You're welcome to join us back in person if you're here, since there's a lot of room and it's wonderful and spacious and well lit and fine people. That's it.